You sat at the table without asking for permission. That's what my daughter-in-law said to me in my own son's house. And then she smashed my plate against the hardwood so loud the neighbor's dog started barking. Beef stew slid under the chair legs like it was trying to crawl away from the scene. I wish I were exaggerating. I wish I could blame the pain meds. But I remember the sound of china exploding and Aaron's silence clearer than my own name. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I had moved in on October 2nd, 2025. Pittsburgh in full burnished color, oaks copper, maples red as brake lights, because the surgeon said I shouldn't climb the narrow steps of my old row house for at least 6 weeks after the knee operation. The plan was simple: sleep on their ground floor recliner, pitch in with groceries, be out by Thanksgiving. 2 weeks later, I was being told where I could place a bowl. That night, October 14th, I picked the porcelain out of the stew and out of my pride, while Melissa explained her house rules. No sitting at the formal dining table unless invited. Label anything I buy in the fridge with a Sharpie. Quiet hours after 9. When she finished, she slid a printed list across the counter like a restaurant check. Aaron rubbed his temples and avoided my eyes. Dad, just use the basement kitchenette for now. It'll keep the peace. I walked downstairs slow, the new knee clicking, and sat with my back against the washing machine, the stew cooling in a plastic container across my lap. I'm 67, and I've refereed union disputes on the mill floor that were gentler. The next morning my phone pinged. PNC sent a low, polite buzz. ATM withdrawal, 320 Oak at 11, 3:07 p.m., Carson Street. I stared at it. I hadn't gone farther than the pharmacy in 2 weeks, and that was with Aaron driving. I opened my banking app. Sure enough, there it was. I scrolled further and caught the pension deposit, $1,842 on the 1st, like it's been for years. That money is the last straight line left in my ledger. The mill closed in 2008. My back gave out in 2014, but the pension kept showing up. Seeing a withdrawal I didn't make felt like waking up to a stranger at the end of my bed. Did you need cash? I asked Melissa in the kitchen, keeping my voice level. She didn't look up from the recipe she was filming for social media. We're managing the household, she said. It's easier if your card's on file. On file. Like I was a utilities account. That afternoon, I climbed painfully up the basement steps to fetch a sweater from the guest room, the one with the narrow window that looks over the alley. The doorknob turned halfway and stopped, metal against metal. A new lock glinted where the old one used to be. When I asked for a spare, Melissa smiled thinly. Oh, we had to change it. The contractor said the old lock was sticking. We'll get you a key once all the work is done. All the work? On a door I just needed to open for a sweater. Downstairs again, I opened my text thread with Aaron and typed, "Son, did we change the lock?" The bubbles appeared, then vanished, then came back. It's temporary. Please eat in the basement kitchenette for dinner tonight. Melissa needs calm. I saved the text. I took a photo of the door. I printed the bank activity at the library kiosk down on Sarah Street and folded the slip into my wallet with the same care I used to give my first paycheck stubs. The stakes weren't just comfort, they were math. My row house equity, $286,000 last appraisal. My savings, $90,300, parked plain as toast in a money market. And that pension, $1,842 a month, my last contract with the life I worked for. If someone was moving those numbers around, then I wasn't a guest in this house. I was a revenue stream. That night I wrote the date, October 14th, at the top of a new notebook and copied the PNC amounts, exact timestamps, the smashed plate, the lock. I added Aaron's message word for word. On the next line, I wrote a sentence like a vow. Every receipt was my future. Humiliation is noisy when it happens. The shout, the plate, the stew on the floor, but the days after are quiet in a way that gnaws. The house had its own weather. Upstairs was warm and lemon clean. Downstairs, where I slept on the recliner, the air smelled like detergent and damp concrete. Every footstep over my head was a reminder that I was a problem to be managed. On Monday, October 20th, I tried to reset the clock. "Aaron, can we talk a minute?" We stood by the garage door, like two men, about to lift something heavy we both knew would hurt. "Dad," he said, "Melissa just needs order. With the surgery and her new client load, she's stretched. We'll get you a key when the contractor's done." Contractor. I almost laughed. On a finished hallway door? I asked him about the ATM withdrawal. He stared at the floor drain like it might tell him the truth. "I'll check on it," he said. I waited for the rest, the part where he'd say, "Of course you'll have your card back," or "That was a mistake," or "We'll set boundaries." Instead, he squeezed my shoulder and went upstairs. The basement door closed. A moment later I heard Melissa say, "How did it go?" His answer was a low murmur through drywall. "The worst part of getting old isn't pain. It's becoming a rumor in your own house." On Wednesday, October 22nd, I pulled the bank app again, just to prove to myself the first notice was an error. Another line glared back. ATM withdrawal, 200 October 18th, 6:12 p.m. Same Carson Street branch. I wrote both amounts in my notebook, underlined them twice, and pressed so hard the paper almost tore. I exported the month's transactions to a PDF at the library and printed 2 copies. One went into my folder, the other into my jacket pocket, where I could feel its weight against my heart like a spare rib. That afternoon, I phoned the pharmacy to ask why my pain prescription was delayed. "It isn't," the clerk said. "It was picked up Friday, October 17th. "By whom?" I asked. She put me on hold and came back with a voice suddenly careful. "Signed for by Melissa Keegan." I asked for a reprint of the bill and a pickup record. She said she could print it if I came by. I hobbled over with my cane and watched the clerk slide the receipt from the machine. Date, time, drug name, copay, signature. The signature looped and sprawled like it had somewhere to be. When I got back to the house, the pill bottle wasn't in the basement cabinet. I wrote that down too. I tried to pray, but kept hearing phrases I didn't have answers for. House rules and on file, when the contractor's done. On Sunday, October 26th, I went to the early Mass at St. Mary's because the pews are forgiving on a bad knee. After the dismissal, Deacon Ray stopped me at the side aisle. "Tom, you look thinner." I shrugged and said something about the appetite not being what it used to be. His eyes flicked to the cane, then to the way I was shifting my weight. "If you need anything, you know where the office is." I nodded and said I was fine. It was the kind of lie older men tell each other to keep the dam from breaking. Back home, I heard Melissa on speakerphone in the kitchen while I measured out oatmeal on the washing machine lid. "Once the rehab nurse signs off," she said, "we'll look at Green Pines. It's not fancy, but—" A woman's voice cut in. "You can apply for Medicaid and maybe use his pension until he's placed." They talked about the wait list like it was weather. I set the measuring cup down before my hands, shook the oats all over the cement. I shouldn't have listened. But the door at the top of the stairs was half open, and the words floated down like lint in a sunbeam. My name wasn't in any sentence. I was he and him, the unit that would be moved, budgeted, solved. I started to climb the stairs to tell her I could hear every word, and then stopped. If this was a plan, anger would only give it speed. That evening, I texted Aaron again, short, like a receipt line. "Pharmacy confirms Melissa signed for my meds 10/17, bottle not delivered." The bubbles appeared, disappeared, then came back. "I'll ask her." I saved that exchange too, then photographed the pharmacy bill on the dryer so the timestamp was visible in the corner. When your dignity is a ledger, you learn to file feelings as evidence. I kept telling myself there had to be a kinder explanation. But numbers don't argue, and signatures don't blush. I made a small stack on the folding table. Bank printouts from Octi 11 and Octi 18, the pharmacy receipt from Octi 17, the text, screenshots. I labeled the manila folder Thanksgiving, not because I had a plan yet, but because I needed a date on the horizon that wasn't a withdrawal or a co-pay. Late that night, alone with the hum of the dehumidifier and the ache of the knee that was supposed to be getting me back to my life, I broke. I let the tears come without turning off the light like a teenager. I cried for my father, who walked out when I was 12 and left me to learn that men can vanish without dying. I cried for the way Aaron's eyes slid off mine when I asked about a lock on a door with my sweater behind it. And then I cried for something smaller and pettier, that a man who worked 3 decades at a mill could be told where to sit at dinner like a dog who jumped on the couch. When it was done, I wiped my face with the dish towel I used as a pillowcase and wrote one more line beneath the receipts. Tomorrow, I stop asking and start confirming. I didn't know the shape of the fight yet. I just knew proof was oxygen, and I needed to breathe. Quiet men with notebooks are dangerous, not because they shout, but because they notice. On Monday morning, October 27th, I walked 3 blocks with my cane to see Nora, my neighbor from the old row house. 70 years old, retired legal secretary, sharper than a judge on caffeine. When I showed her my notes, she didn't flinch. She reached for her bifocals, skimmed the pages, and said, "Tom, this is elder financial exploitation. And if she's waving a power of attorney around, it's a bluff until you see the notarization." I blinked. "How do I check that?" She grinned, the kind of grin people wear when they still enjoy justice. "County notary logs. Every notarization in Allegheny County leaves a paper scent trail. We can look it up." That same afternoon, we drove to the county office. My knee barked with every stare, but the adrenaline worked better than ibuprofen. The clerk pulled a leather ledger from the shelf. We scanned October's entries under K. Nothing. No Melissa Keegan, no Aaron Keegan, no Thomas Keegan. The power of attorney she'd bragged about didn't exist in the public record. Nora patted the counter. "Then she's bluffing, darling. And bluffers hang themselves on documentation." She handed me 3 printed templates she kept on a flash drive. Revocation of all prior. POA certified demand letter for return of financial property bank dispute report. "Write the truth," she said, "not the rage. Rage doesn't stand up in court. Receipts do." That night in the basement, I opened a fresh file on my old Dell laptop. I filled in every blank, typed every date, every figure exactly. $320 on October 11th, $200 on October 18th, pharmacy bill $46.50 copay, all charged to my account. Then I saved the file twice, once on the desktop, once on a USB drive tucked in my wallet. By October 29th, I had a new routine. Mornings, ice the knee. Afternoons, document. Evenings, record. I downloaded a free voice memo app on my phone and set it on the laundry shelf near the stairs. It captured Melissa's footsteps, her conversations, and on the 3rd night, the jackpot. Her voice light and careless. "His card is on autofill. Now, don't worry, it's already linked to my Instacart." My heart thudded. I replayed it twice to be sure. Then I saved the audio file and sent a copy to Nora by email with the subject line, "Insurance Policy." On Halloween, October 31st, the house buzzed with kids knocking and Melissa laughing at the door in a witch's hat. I stayed below, my notebook open beside a half-empty mug of cocoa. I looked at the calendar and drew a line around November 27th, Thanksgiving, the date I'd written on the folder. "Public," I wrote beside it. "Not revenge, reveal." The next morning, November 1st, I went to the bank on Carson Street. The teller, a young woman named Maggie, recognized my cane from previous visits. "Mr. Keegan, you doing okay?" she asked. I told her about the withdrawals, low and calm. She frowned at her screen, then whispered, "Those were card insert transactions, not tap or online. And the camera angle shows a shorter customer using the keypad." She couldn't show me the footage, but her tone did the job. "We can note that on file," she said. She printed a customer claim form and handed it to me. I signed it, and she stamped it Novice 1 2025, dispute filed. That night I came home and wrote it down. Bank confirms insert use, different height. Claim filed. Then I stapled the stamped form to my folder. Every new piece of paper made the basement feel less like exile and more like headquarters. On November 3rd, Nora called. "You ever hear of Deacon Ray?" she asked. "Sure, churchman, why?" "He mediates family disputes through the parish. Neutral ground. If this goes to confrontation, he'll keep the peace." That got me thinking. The only way to expose truth safely was in daylight, with witnesses. Church dinners, holidays, people behave badly in private, but they tremble when others watch. I started slipping small clues into conversations with Aaron. "We'll all be together for Thanksgiving, right?" I'd say, or maybe Deacon Ray could bless the meal this year. Each time he nodded, distracted. Perfect. The stage was setting itself. On November 5th, I checked the upstairs lock again. Still no spare key. Melissa's contractor never appeared. I took a picture of the lock and zoomed in on the shiny brass. Etched on the edge was a small manufacturer's stamp and date. Oct. 8, 2025. Changed the same week, she called it sticky. Evidence speaks softly, but it remembers. Later that week I found a budget spreadsheet, open on the family computer in the corner of the basement. My name wasn't in it, but a line item labeled Dad's Pension, Household Allocation, totaled 2,560 for November. My pension after taxes, and 842. She was planning to allocate more than existed. I took a screenshot and printed it at the library. By November 7th, I'd built a binder labeled Evidence Do Not Discard. Inside were 7 dividers: bank, pharmacy, texts, lock, recording, spreadsheet, correspondence. Each plastic sleeve crisp and dated. That evening I sat with the lamp off, phone glowing like a coal in my hand. Upstairs I could hear her humming. Aaron's muted TV. My reflection on the black screen looked tired, older than 67. I pressed record again, not to catch her voice, but my own. "This is Tom Keegan. If something happens to me or my accounts, this binder is proof. Every receipt is my future." When I finished, I closed the notebook and looked at the locked ceiling above me, that room where my life's scraps were held hostage. She thought the rules would break me, but I was building new ones. Thanksgiving wasn't going to be a dinner. It was going to be a deposition. If you can't outrun them, outpaper them. By the second week of November, Pittsburgh was gray as furnace smoke, and I had enough proof to start welding the case together. Nora came by with her portable printer and a pot of coffee. "Let's make this official," she said. We spread my folder out on the laundry table like a crime scene. On November 10th, we drafted 3 letters, each one dated, signed, and witnessed by Nora's steady hand. The first was a certified demand letter to Melissa, citing unauthorized access to my PNC account and requesting the immediate return of my debit card. The second was a revocation of any power of attorney, real or implied, effective upon receipt. The third went to the bank's fraud department, disputing the October 11th and 18 withdrawals and attaching photocopies of both transaction slips. Nora looked at my trembling signature. "Tom, remember," she said, "they can call you bitter. They can't call you unverified." We sealed the envelopes, took photos of each, and I paid for certified mail at the post office. 3 green receipts stapled to my folder, each one proof of a line I'd drawn in ink. 2 days later, I opened a new credit union account on Butler Street. I rerouted my pension direct deposit, changed my online banking password, and set up SMS alerts for every transaction. The manager handed me a small welcome packet and said, "You'll sleep better knowing who has access." I smiled. That's the plan. Meanwhile, I laid groundwork for the reveal. I called Deacon Ray. "Deacon, could you bless our Thanksgiving dinner this year? I think the family could use some peace." He chuckled, unaware of the subtext. "Always glad to serve, Tom." Perfect. A neutral witness with moral gravity. Next, I texted the extended family group, "Let's all come early this year. I want to give thanks properly," Melissa replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Aaron wrote, "Sounds good, Dad." They had no idea they'd just RSVP'd to their own cross-examination. On November 15th, I scheduled a locksmith inspection. When the young tech arrived, I played the polite old man. "This lock's been giving me trouble since October. Can you take a look?" He unscrewed it, whistled low, and said, "This isn't old, it's brand new. Installed October 8th, see the stamp?" Whoever did this kept the master key. I asked for the findings in writing. He printed an invoice on carbon paper. Lock replaced Oct. 8, 2025. No resident key provided. He tore off my copy. I slid it into the folder under lock evidence. That evening I called Nora. "The trap's almost built." She laughed softly. It's not a trap, Tom, it's daylight. You're just opening the curtains. On November 18th, I visited the county notary office again, this time to double-check the ledger. Still no record of any Keegan power of attorney. The clerk initialed my handwritten note, no POA found as of 11/18/25. I added that to the binder too. By November 20th, the house had started smelling of cinnamon and denial. Melissa was planning her Thanksgiving centerpiece, posting photos of golden brown test turkeys on Facebook with captions like, "Family time incoming." I scrolled through the comments, all heart emojis and praise. Nobody could imagine the story behind those pictures. A man sleeping beside a washer, his accounts raided by the woman smiling in the photos. On November 22nd, I practiced my lines, not angry, not pleading, just factual. This is what happened. These are the dates. These are the numbers. No shouting. Rage lets them play the victim. Evidence makes them squirm. I checked my phone recordings again. Her voice was clear. His card is on autofill, don't worry. That single line, captured on October 29th, would be my gavel. By November 24th, my Thanksgiving folder had thickened like a ledger, ready for audit. Bank dispute form, stamped NOV, 1 certified mail receipts dated. NOV 10 locksmith invoice dated. NOV 20 notary confirmation. NOV 18 voice memo transcript dated. OC 29 each sheet in a plastic sleeve, each page numbered. I'd even included a title page, evidence of unauthorized financial use. Thomas Keegan vs. Melissa Keegan, informal family matter. That night, as rain whispered on the basement window, I slid the binder into a manila envelope marked Thanksgiving for the record. I didn't want drama. I wanted accountability. When I turned off the light, I pictured the dining table upstairs, long, polished, the same one that once hosted birthdays and graduations, the same one I'd been banished from. Soon, that table would see paper plates of truth. Thanksgiving wasn't going to be dinner anymore. It was going to be disclosure day. Thanksgiving is supposed to be about gratitude. But that year, for me, it was about gravity, pulling truth out of hiding and dropping it right in the center of the table where everyone could see it. By the time I climbed the steps that afternoon, my knee brace biting into my skin, the house already smelled of turkey and tension. Melissa had arranged the table like a magazine spread. Gold chargers, linen napkins folded into maple leaves, candles lit early for ambience. I could feel my pulse in my jaw. Aaron was carving quietly, his movements tight, rehearsed. Cousins and aunts chatted about traffic and football, all unaware they were about to witness the slow collapse of a carefully curated lie. Deacon Ray arrived just before 5, Bible in hand, smiling the way men do before walking into a storm. "Tom," he said, shaking my hand, "thank you for inviting me." "Wouldn't be Thanksgiving without grace," I answered. Meaning every word, though not the way they thought. As plates were passed and glasses clinked, Melissa cleared her throat. "Before grace, I'd like to say, actually," I cut in, my voice steady, "if you don't mind, I'll go first." Every head turned. I reached under the table and lifted the manila folder. I set it down between the mashed potatoes and the cranberry sauce. "I brought my own side dish," I said. "It's called the truth." The room went still. Aaron blinked, confused. "Dad, what?" I flipped the folder open. On October 11th, a $320 ATM withdrawal from my account. October 18th, another $200, both near the Carson Street branch. I haven't been there in months, yet someone's been using my card. I held up the bank printouts, each stamped and dated. "Here's the proof." Melissa's face didn't flinch. "This is inappropriate," she snapped, glancing at Deacon Ray as though seeking backup. "So was smashing my dinner plate because I sat at my family's table," I said quietly. A gasp somewhere near the end of the table. I continued, slow, deliberate. "Then there's the pharmacy bill." I slid the receipt across the table, Melissa's name scribbled in the pickup line. "You signed for my medication on October 17th, never delivered it." Aaron's voice cracked. "Mel, is that true?" She stammered. "I picked it up for convenience." "I told you that." I raised a hand, calm. "You also changed the lock on the upstairs hallway door on October 8th. I placed the locksmith invoice on the table, the carbon paper faint but legible. No resident key provided. I have the written invoice. The master key was never returned. The candles flickered. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock and the thud of my heart. "Dad," Aaron started. "Not done." I reached for my phone and tapped the screen. Melissa's voice filled the room, clear and casual. "His card is on autofill. Don't worry." Gasps again. Silverware froze midair. Even the cousins who'd been whispering went pale. Melissa's chair scraped back. "You recorded me?" "That's illegal." "No, it's my home, my phone, and my own basement," I replied. "Perfectly legal in Pennsylvania." Deacon Ray cleared his throat softly, his voice the low calm of a man used to graveside peace. "Perhaps we should let Tom finish." I turned to Aaron, my voice low. "You told me to stay downstairs to keep the peace. You said Melissa needed order. Well, this is her order." I gestured to the papers spread across the table like evidence in a courtroom. "This isn't about comfort. It's about control over my pension, my savings, my dignity." Aaron's eyes were glassy, panic behind them. "Mel, tell me this isn't what it looks like." She folded her arms, chin high. "I was protecting us. You know how careless he can be. His card was sitting out. His bank password was written in a notebook." "No," I cut in. "It was in a locked drawer, which you also had a key to." The tension snapped like a bowstring. One of the cousins muttered, "Oh my God." I looked at Deacon Ray. "You said grace last year for blessings. This year, could you say it for truth?" He bowed his head, the silence thick as wet cement. "Lord," he said, "we thank you for the courage to speak truth, even when it's heavy. We thank you for families who learn, even through pain, that honesty is the only table worth sitting at." When he finished, nobody moved. I closed the folder, slid it toward Melissa and said quietly, "You keep these copies. I've already mailed the originals to my attorney and the bank. What happens next depends on your honesty and your conscience." Aaron reached across the table and put his hand on mine, trembling. "Dad, I didn't know." "I believe you," I said. "But now you do." The turkey went cold. The candles burned low. And for the first time since I'd moved in, the house was completely silent. Not because Melissa demanded it, but because the truth had finally spoken louder than she could. When I pushed my chair back, no one stopped me. I stood, without asking permission, and for the first time in weeks I felt taller than the stairs leading down to that basement. The morning after Thanksgiving felt like a hangover without the alcohol. The house was quiet, too quiet, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting for the fallout to land somewhere. At around 8 a.m., I heard a soft knock at the basement door. It was Aaron. He stepped in seared, eyes rimmed red, hair uncombed. He wasn't holding coffee or breakfast, just my debit card and a folded piece of lined paper. "Dad," his voice cracked. "I'm sorry." I stared at the card in his hand. "You didn't take it." "I didn't stop it either," he said. "That's just as bad." He placed the card on the table, then unfolded the paper. It was an IOU, $520 to be repaid to Dad immediately. Withdrawals from Oct 11 and Oct 18, plus $46.50 for the pharmacy. He'd even signed it with the date, Nov 28, 2025. I read it once, then twice. "This isn't about the money, Aaron." "I know," he whispered, "but it's a start." Melissa didn't come downstairs that morning. The only sign of her was the sound of drawers opening upstairs, the sharp click of luggage wheels, and the hollow rhythm of closet doors slamming shut. By noon, she was gone. A text buzzed at 12:47 p.m. "You've made this house hostile. I'm staying at my sister's until you find another place to live." I looked at the message and shook my head. "Find another place to live." I whispered the words aloud like a curse someone else had written. I didn't respond. Instead, I drove, slow and stiff, to the Pittsburgh Police Zone 3 precinct on Arlington Avenue. The desk officer, a woman about my age, looked up when I approached. "I'm not filing charges," I told her. "Not yet. But I need an informational report on possible elder financial exploitation." "Just to have it time-stamped," she nodded. Typed as I explained and stapled my supporting documents. Bank dispute form, Nov 1, 2025. Locksmith invoice, Nov 20, 2025. Voice memo transcript. His card is on autofill, don't worry. IOU from Aaron Keegan, signed Nov 28, 2025. When she handed me the carbon copy, she said, "You're smart to get ahead of it. People talk about love, but paper keeps the peace." The next day, Nov 29, the bank credited back $520 pending investigation. A letter confirmed. Disputed transactions provisionally reversed. Case under internal review. I slipped it into my binder under outcome. On Novi 30, I stopped by the pharmacy. The manager, a kind man named Hussein, recognized me from earlier. "Mr. Keegan," he said, "we found the pickup record." He printed a second copy signed at the bottom. Collected by Melissa Keegan, Oct 17, 2025, 4:23 p.m. "You keep this," he said, "in case anyone questions you again." That evening, I drove by St. Mary's Church, where Deacon Ray was locking up after Mass. He saw me and smiled gently. "Tom, that was a hard dinner, but sometimes truth doesn't get applause. It gets quiet." "I'm not sure Aaron will forgive himself," I said. "He will," the deacon replied. "Shame is just pain that hasn't found its purpose yet." I thought about that all the way home. When I got back, the house was empty. Aaron had gone to work. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and regret. I sat at the dining table, yes, that table, with my binder in front of me. I flipped through every page, every receipt, every signature. Together, they told the story Melissa had tried to rewrite in whispers and control. And for the first time in months, I felt steady. I wasn't finished. Not yet. The money was back, but the boundary wasn't. Melissa might have left the house, but her shadow was still in the paperwork, in the locks, in the silence Aaron now lived in. I looked at the final empty section in my binder labeled Resolution. It was time to fill it, legally, cleanly, permanently. I turned off the light, closed the folder, and whispered the same sentence I'd written in my notebook the first night she broke my plate. "Every receipt is my future." And now, the future was calling for signatures. Justice, when you do it right, doesn't arrive with sirens. It comes on letterhead. On the morning of December 2nd, Nora came over with her reading glasses, and that same look she wore the day she taught me about notary logs, half grandmotherly, half prosecutor. "Time to close the loop," she said, setting down her laptop. Together, we drafted a family settlement memo. Plain, clean, impossible to argue with. It listed the facts like a courtroom ledger. Unauthorized withdrawals, totaling $520 acknowledged. Debit. Card and all copies returned. Spare. Key for upstairs lock to be provided within 24 hours. Melissa Keegan to sign a statement admitting accidental use and agree not to access any financial account belonging to Thomas Keegan. If any clause is breached, a civil claim for elder financial exploitation will be filed under Pennsylvania statute per 3927. At the bottom, we left signature lines for Aaron, Melissa, and myself. Nora leaned back. "You're not suing," she said. "You're warning with precision." 2 days later, on December 4th, I emailed the document to both of them with the subject line, "Proposed Family Resolution for immediate review." Aaron replied within an hour, "I'll sign." "Mel needs time." Of course she did. By December 7th, Deacon Ray arranged a mediation at St. Mary's Fellowship Hall. He brewed coffee, set up 3 chairs, and told me quietly, "Let me open with prayer. You keep it calm." Melissa arrived late. A lawyer friend in tow, short woman, brisk tone, calling herself a consultant. She started talking before she sat down. "Tom, this is unnecessary. Family issues should stay private," I smiled. "They were private until my money left the bank." Her consultant frowned, leafing through the binder I'd placed on the table. "You keep meticulous records, Mr. Keegan." "Habit," I said. 30 years at the mill taught me that numbers are safer than promises." Deacon Ray nodded toward me. "Tom, would you read the memo aloud?" I did. Every line, every clause, every dollar amount. When I reached the section about the civil claim, Melissa's foot started tapping. She whispered something to her lawyer, who glanced at the copies, then said, "You're within your rights, Mr. Keegan." Melissa snapped. "I said it was a mistake." I met her eyes, then signed the correction. For a long moment only the coffee pot hissed. Finally she picked up the pen, signed her name in stiff, angry loops, and pushed the paper toward me. "Satisfied?" "Almost," I said. "The lock?" Aaron reached into his pocket and handed me a brass key. "The locksmith's spare." She didn't know I took it. I pocketed it carefully. Now I'm satisfied. By December 10th, the bank completed its internal review and confirmed full reimbursement of the disputed funds, citing documented misuse by family member. The letter arrived on cream paper with an embossed seal. I slipped it into the final section of the binder marked Outcome. Next, Nora helped me execute my living trust, transferring ownership of my row house, valued at $286,000, and savings, $94,300, into a structure only I controlled. Aaron was listed as beneficiary, not co-owner. Melissa's name appeared nowhere. We also updated my power of attorney, a new, notarized version, naming Nora as temporary representative for any medical or legal decisions should I ever be incapacitated. It was a poetic symmetry. The neighbor Melissa ignored became the woman who protected everything she wanted. By December 12th, I had the papers notarized and filed. For the first time in months, my accounts, my house, and my name were legally untouchable. Aaron came by that weekend, quieter than I'd ever seen him. "Dad, I'm filing for separation," he said, eyes down. "She won't forgive me for signing that memo." I nodded. "Don't do it for me. Do it for the man you want your son to remember one day." He looked up, tears streaking. "I already did. 3 days later, I called Nora to tell her it was done." She laughed, the sound of victory steeped in wisdom. "See, Tom, revenge doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just a line that says filed and recorded." That night, I updated the last page of my notebook. Under the final entry, I wrote, "December 15th, 2025, all accounts secure. Settlement signed. Trust filed. Freedom restored." I closed the cover, exhaled, and smiled at the thought that somewhere out there, Melissa was learning what happens when you try to cage an old man who still knows how to keep receipts. Revenge wasn't fury. It was structure. It wasn't shouting. It was clarity. And it wasn't about breaking anyone. It was about making sure they could never break me again. A man sits, finally, without asking. That Christmas Eve, the city was powdered in white, thin enough to be pretty, light enough to melt by morning. I stood at the kitchen window of my old row house, stirring stew in the pot I'd almost forgotten I owned. Steam fogged the glass, blurring the reflection of a man who'd survived humiliation, outweighted shame, and built his dignity back one notarized page at a time. The radiator hissed, the kind of steady warmth you only appreciate after sleeping beside a washer. I'd polished the dining table myself, old oak, scratched but solid, like me. 2 bowls sat waiting, one for me, one for Aaron. When he arrived, there was no grand speech, no apology rehearsed. Just the sound of boots stamping snow off at the door and the soft thud of the gift bag he carried. "Dad," he said, "I figured stew night beats turkey." We ate slow, both of us trying not to mention her name. Finally, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded cashier's check for $520. "The bank already reimbursed it," I said. He nodded. "I know. This is from me. For the ledger. For the respect. I took it, studied his handwriting on the memo line. For my father. I didn't cash it. I didn't need to. He'd already been paid back in full by his eyes finally meeting mine. He told me Melissa had filed for divorce the week before, citing emotional incompatibility. He said it without bitterness, almost with relief. She wanted control, he said. And I kept giving it to her until she wanted mine, too. I nodded. "Son, control isn't love. It's just fear in a prettier dress." He smiled, faint but genuine. "You sound like Nora." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time since October, before he left. He looked around the room, taking in the photos I'd rehung, his graduation, his wedding for now still on the wall, His mother's favorite lilies in a jar by the window. "Feels like home again," he said. "It always was," I replied. "Just took a little paperwork to remind everyone." After he left, I cleaned the dishes, wiped the counters, and sat by the window watching the streetlights blur through snow. Across the alley, Nora's lights twinkled faintly. I texted her, "Thank you for everything. Merry Christmas." She replied within minutes, "Merry Christmas, Tom. Proud of you." I walked to the cabinet, opened it, and looked at the plate I'd kept, the twin of the one Melissa smashed that night. I turned it over in my hands, tracing the pattern with my thumb. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was a reminder that silence is not peace, and obedience is not love. I placed it back on the shelf, perfectly aligned. Then I poured myself a small glass of whiskey and sat at the head of the table. No permission, no apology, no Sharpie labels on my food. Just me and the quiet hum of a house that finally belonged to me again. I picked up my notebook, the one that started it all, and added one final entry under the last date, December 24th, 2025. Freedom audited. Balance verified. Account closed. I leaned back and let the sound of the clock fill the room. Kindness without boundaries is a savings account without a password. And love, I've learned, needs locks, logs, and light. They didn't lose me. They cashed me out, and I made sure the receipt had their name on it.